Okay, so I am going to try to go over some of the questions with you, and hopefully this will help you with those genetics problems. So this question is telling you that the mice have two forms of a gene for hair texture. So um, oops, we have straight hair, which is H, and curly hair, small h. So I always like to write those down. So we have H, capital H for straight, and a small h for curly, right? They also have two forms of the gene that determines the length of their tails. So we have short tails, dominant T, and long tails with a small t. Okay, so here is the two forms of the hair, the hair gene, and these are the two forms of the length of tail genes. And so since we have that's going to be a dihybrid cross, right? There's four possible allele combinations. So we call the different forms of a gene alleles. Just write that up here for you. These are the forms of genes. So usually when we're doing just a straight dominant recessive cross, there's going to be two forms. And so let's look at what the genotypes of our parental generation would be. So our parental generation, it says what would be the phenotypic ratio of the offspring. So we're looking for phenotypic ratio. So phenotype means the physical appearance. So that's what your answer is going to be in the terms of it. And we'll go back to that. What would be the phenotypic ratio of the offspring if a mouse that was heterozygous for straight hair? So let's do that first. So heterozygous for straight hair. And heterozygous means they have two different alleles, but because they have two different alleles, they have a dominant and recessive. So here's our one parent we know is going to be HH, big H, little h, which is heterozygous, and had a long tail. So long tail, it has to be homozygous recessive. So that's TT, right? So this is our genotype of, this is parent one, right? So this is parent number one. Parent number two, so it's crossed with a mouse that had curly hair. So that's going to be HH, which is curly is our recessive. So it's got to be recessive, homozygous recessive, HH, and was heterozygous for tail length. And so tail length is going to be heterozygous, so big T, little t. Okay? So straight hair and long tail, right? Straight hair, heterozygous for straight hair. Long tail will be homozygous recessive, right? Because long tails are recessive, so we have to have two recessive alleles. And then our other parent had curly hair, right? Curly has to be homozygous recessive. It's going to be curly, and then heterozygous for tail length. Okay, so those are our two parents. So how many combinations do we have here? We can pair big H with little t and big H with little t. Here we have a little h with little t and little h with little t. So we really only have, so if we wrote those out, H, T, H, T, H, T, H, T. So we really only have two possible combinations, right? Over here, we would have little h, big T, and little h, big T, and then little h, little t, and little h, little t. Okay? So let's write those out. Little h, T, little h, big T, little h, little t, and little h, big T. And again, we only have 2 possible combinations. And so our Punnett square needs to have 4 squares. And so let's go ahead and make our Punnett square. And we would just put all of our possible allele combinations beside the box. So if this is parent 1 over here, and this is parent 2 over here, we would put parent 1 has big H. Whoops, that looks bad. Whoops, that was not the eraser. Here we go. And then, oops. I'm not getting to erase this. Let's see. Well, there we go. Okay. So let's write our allele combinations here. Big H, little t, and little h, little t. And then parent 2 is little h, big T, little h, big T, and little h, little t. Okay? Now we're just going to cross these. And we're going to write all of those letters in the box. And we're going to put the h's together and t's together so we can see what our phenotypes are going to be. So let's do this. So we have big H, big T, little t. Here we have big H, little t, little t. Here we have little h, little t, little h. I'm going to put those together. So, whoops. Little h, and then big T, little t. And over here, h, little h, little t, little t. So, these are the possible outcomes. So if we interpreted these as phenotypes, what's the physical appearance of each of these? We could say, so this is big H, little h, right? So we have straight, curly, right? And straight is dominant. So this one would have straight hair and a short tail, right? Anytime we have a dominant allele, that's what the phenotype's going to be. So here we have straight, and because this one is small t, that's going to be long, right? Here we have little h, and so that's going to be curly hair, right? And big T, little t means it's going to be a short tail because short is dominant. And here we have curly and long, right? So we have straight, short, straight, long, curly, short, curly, long. So we have, if we wrote this out in terms of ratio, it would be 1, right? 1 straight and short to 1 straight and long to 1 curly and short to 1 curly and long. Okay? Let's look at another example. Sorry. So the next one is, it says, we have a male rabbit with genotype GGBB, big G, little b, little b. And is crossed with a female that has this genotype. So that helps us out because, it's giving us the genotypes. We don't have to figure them out this time. So if we have G, G, B, B, we know that since we have a dominant allele here, we're going to have gray fur. So this one's going to have gray fur, and little b is blue eyes. Right? And then we have little g, and capital B, little b. And so this one's going to show the recessive trait since we have homozygous recessive. And so if we look up here, that means it's going to have white fur and black eyes, right? Because there's a dominant allele there. So what are the possible phenotypes for the offspring produced? So we're doing the same thing. Let's look at what our combination of alleles would be for G, G, B, B. We have big G, little b, big G, little b, little g, big or little b, and little g, little b. So basically, again, we have two possible combinations, right? If we look at the second or the other parent, we have little g, big B, little b. And so we have this combination, right? And this combination, little g, big B, little g, little b. So again, we have two possible combinations, little g, big B, little g, little b. All right? And so now we just make our Punnett square. And we put our possible allele combinations on the side. Oops. So G, little b, little g, little b. And up here would be G, B, and little g, little b. And then we do the same thing, right? So we have G, G, B, B. And we can just fill them in. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go through and figure out the phenotypes for these, just like we did on the other one, on the first one. Okay? And then you have to answer the questions. What's true about the phenotypes of the offspring? So for example, big G, little g, and big B, little b would mean that this one, this possible phenotype would be gray fur and black eyes, right? And then just do the same for the other ones, and then go down and look at the choices you have. All right? All right, let's look at another one. So here are, I'm going to do a couple with the X-linked traits. And when we do X-linked, we have to remember that females are XX, these are females, and males are XY. So males only have one X chromosome. And so X-linked means or if it's sex-linked, it's X-linked is what it means. So for this one, in your journey, it use this as an example. The eye color gene is located on the X chromosomes for fruit flies. And white color is recessive, right? So we're going to use a big R for red eyes and a little r for white. Okay. So, and these are only on the X chromosome. So it says a male fruit fly with red eyes. So we have to use the XY on this. So if it has red eyes, it's X with a big R beside it. Okay? And then we have the Y with no allele on there because we don't have any genes for eye color on the Y chromosome. It says it's crossed with a female with white eyes. So the female is going to be X little r, X little r. Because the only way it can have white eyes is to have two recessive alleles, right? Be homozygous recessive. And then we just go ahead and draw our Punnett square. And do the combinations. And so we would see that we have X big R, X little r, X big R, X little r, X little r, Y, and X little r, Y. So in addition to knowing eye color, you can also see the percentage of males and females with that eye color. So notice that the only color of eyes that the female can donate, is little r. So anyway, so we have two females here, and both, let me see if I can erase that. Oops, shoot. Let's redraw that. And this is X, sorry. So we have both females. So both females are going to have red eyes because there's a dominant allele present, right? However, both males are going to have white, right? Because they only get one gene. And if they get the recessive gene, that's the color eye they're going to have. Okay? Let's do one here. There's also one about hemophilia on this quiz. And again, hemophilia is a sex-linked trait, right? Sex-linked trait, meaning that it's X-linked. And so it's either going to be X. And so hemophilia is also recessive, and it tells you that in your journey. So X little h would be hemophilia. X big H is going to be normal. Okay. So it says a woman who is a carrier. And so you need to know what a carrier is. If a woman is a carrier, that means she has one of those alleles. So this woman that's a carrier would be X big H, which is normal, but she's carrying a hemophilia gene. And she's going to marry a man that is non-hemophilic, right? So the man would be XY, right? And if he's non-hemophilic, he would have a normal allele. And so again, you're just going to put that in a Punnett square. We're only crossing one one trait, the hemophilia trait. So we know there's going to be 4 boxes. So we have the female, right, which is X big H, and X little h, because she's a carrier. And then the male, who's going to be X big H, because he's normal. And then he also has a Y chromosome. And then you go ahead and do the crosses for that. Okay? Well, I hope this helps. If you have any further questions, let me know.